is that tomorrow we are going to be having a demonstration of all of the application items. So this is just a big overview of the parts of the program that we have available to you. And tomorrow we will be showing you, doing hands-on demonstration, and we will be showing you the parts of the online. Again, if you haven't taken the time to complete your questions, we will be asking you there how many of you have established work sites already, and do you have any youth recruited for the program yet? And you may have some youth recruited, but maybe you just don't have them installed into the system yet or inputted into the system yet. We are going to be talking about how you can do that tomorrow as well.
First of all, I want to tell everybody thank you so much for your diligent work on this project. This has been a pretty fast project to get up and going, and we really appreciate your guys' efforts. And we're really excited to get this going. So basically, my part of this presentation is just going to be going through the procedures manual and processes, and then Sheila Sloan will be going over the fiscal part of it. There's a lot of files that we have attached to this webinar that we need for you to download. What I'm going to do is go through my presentation, and then I'm going to go through a couple of those files so you can take a look at them. There's going to be several files that are required for you to use, and as we go through, we'll explain exactly what we need. The presentation follows the procedures manual. If you don't have it printed out or anything, that's fine. You just, I've got both the presentation and the procedures manual loaded up as documents. So you need to use that procedures manual as you're going along with this program. Okay, to begin with, what we required is a program for youth ages 14 to 16 and receiving work experience. And then when you guys came in, you had specific modules and training modules or employment modules that you were looking with. You were either going to do a program for the young youth, 14 to 16. You're going to do a program for in-school youth that are 16 to 21, or a program for out-of-school youth, 16 to 24, or community gardens. And you could do more than one of these modules, too. You weren't tied into just one module. You could come in and do more than one module. So those were basically the guidelines of our RFA. We also requested that you targeted careers that dealt with the 16 clusters. And this is back in my presentation further. We'll kind of go into this, but dealing with the 16 national clusters and in line with the Illinois Pathways Project. And that's just an example of the clusters that we were discussing. Let's get into the meat of it. Right now, basically, what you guys need to be doing is determining youth eligibility. And youth eligibility is defined as a participant that's 14 to 24. They are served under one of the following programs. They are either being served under the National School Lunch Program, they're a participant in the Workforce Investment Act, they're receiving food stamps or the SNAP program, they're temporary assistance for needy families, they're a court-involved or at-risk youth, or the family income does not exceed 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. In the procedures manual, under attachment A, we have all of these defined. So when you're looking at the procedures manual, we go through and we actually define each of these categories, and then what kind of documentation is required for those. The one thing I want to really stress is document, document, document. You have to have supporting documentation on eligibility. So each client will have their own file, and in that there's going to be an application, which I'm going to show you here soon, and then you need to document their eligibility be based upon one of these criteria. Okay, some additional requirements is they have to be an Illinois resident. You must complete an I-9 form. An I-9 form has to be completed for every participant before they can begin work. And in the procedures manual, there is a website right there, and you can see it on the screen for where the I-9 form is. If a participant is 14 or 15, they need to have a work permit. So you need to have that completed prior to them participating in the program. What I have on screen right now is a screen print of the application in Illinois WorkNet. Tomorrow is going to be a big day because you're going to be introduced to the processes with Illinois WorkNet, and all of your information and data is going to be kept in this system. So the application is an online application, and like I said, this is a screen print of what it's going to look like. Once the students complete this, and they can complete it on the computer, or you can assist them on the computer with this. Once it's completed, it needs to be printed out, and then you need to have the applicant or the participant sign the form. If the participant is under 18, then you need to have the parent or guardian sign the form. And then the bottom line is for your staffing, for the provider. So your case manager or the intake individual needs to sign this form. This form needs to be printed, obviously, and then it needs to be included in a client file along with their eligibility documentation. And like I said, this is an online application that they will be completing in Illinois WorkNet. Okay, we're going to go into the specific program requirements. A big part of your activity is going to be with your case management and supportive services. So in case management, right now I'm assuming you guys are doing your intake and outreach for your youth participants. Job assessment, once you have determined the youth that are eligible, you're going to be looking at them for assessment into the appropriate job that you're going to be placing them in. And a part of this is also doing the outreach for the employers. So right now we need to be very diligent on recruiting the youth and also recruiting quality work sites and quality employers for these youth to be placed in. So we're doing our assessments for job placement. We're placing them in jobs. And then we have a work readiness component. And this will be discussed in further detail tomorrow with Illinois WorkNet. But Illinois WorkNet's work readiness component is a required component for you to use with these students. There's a career education component that's also involved with this. With the design of the program, we received a tremendous amount of requests and funding for the Summer Youth Program, and so that was one of the reasons we had to kind of narrow in and focus in a little bit more on summer specifically for this program. So the career education component of it is available, and it's also available through Illinois WorkNet, or if you have something specific that you're doing locally with maybe a college or specific program, that's a component of the career education, and I'll discuss this a little bit later as I get through my presentation. But supportive service assessment, you need to do an assessment of the youth, see what kind of supportive services are needed, whether it be transportation needs, and we have a specific form that you're going to be using for that. And then you need to do follow-up on the clients, monitor. Keep an eye on these work sites, make sure that the youth are showing up. We're going to have a specific generic timesheet that everybody has to use, and I'll show that to you in a little bit. And then if they need any referrals, if you need to referral them to any other type of programs for any supportive services to help them with being successful with this work experience. So we just covered the supportive services. Like I said, there must be, you must use our supportive services form, and no promotional items are allowed, so you can't buy any like coffee mugs or any t-shirts unless they're very specifically needed for this project. Transportation assistance is an allowable cost, daycare, work clothes, tools and supplies that are relevant to the job that they're doing and required, and if the employer does not provide them. So those are allowable costs to this. Moving on. We're talking about the work readiness component. This is going to be done in Illinois WorkNet. A couple things that are required is the youth have to take a pre-test, they have to take a post-test, and then they need to complete the learning activities. And success of the work readiness component is considered a score of 70 or higher on the post-test. So these are required components. I'm sure all of you have a different process in how you're doing your intake and working with the work readiness. And they're going to talk about this tomorrow too, but we're looking at traditionally around 3 hours a week or 15 hours in a 6-week period to complete the work readiness component. And work readiness is included in the wages. So the hours that they spend on work readiness will be logged and counted as a part of their wage hours that they're being paid for. We recommend that work readiness not exceed 10% of their total work hours because this is a work experience program and we want the bulk of their time on a job and learning work skills on a work site. So specific activities that are included in the work readiness, and I won't go into this too much, but we have career exploration and training, financial literacy, workplace skills, job search skills, resume writing, applying for jobs, interviewing skills, and then a section on personal responsibility and safety, which is dealing with violence awareness and dealing with bullying in the schools and bullying in the workplaces. And so these are all very, very good skill sets that all of these youth need to acquire to be successful on the job. Career education and Illinois career paths. Training, this could be coursework. Probably a lot will be work-based learning. If there's any credentials or assessments that may be offered. Any field trips or guest speakers must be relevant to career components. So it has to be related to the career component, and no field trips to swimming pools or anything like that. It has to be totally related to the career learning. And an example of this is I did talk with one organization that is doing a pharmacy tech. So they're working with out-of-school youth, and there's a training component along with the work experience component, working with a CVS, and then eventually being placed into pharmacy technicians. So in this particular case, there would be some course work along with that. There's obviously work-based learning, and then there could be a credential that it's earned as a result of it also. Targeted careers, I had mentioned that earlier. We have the 16 nationally recognized clusters, and we have Illinois Work Paths, and I have a couple links there, and this is also in your manual. But these can be resources for you. So if you're interested in providing more in the career education and career work paths, I strongly suggest, and if you don't have anything local that you've already established, I strongly suggest that you look at these these links here, and the resources that are available through the Illinois Pathways and the Illinois Program of Study. And that can give you some very good information regarding career education. Okay, program steps. We just want to kind of outline, what we need to be doing. So right now, like I said, you need to be recruiting eligible participants. Get these kids in, get their eligibility going, get them in Illinois WorkNet, and get them their applications put into Illinois WorkNet. Like I said, you may all have different processes. Some of you may have a large orientation where you're inviting a lot of the youth in, and if you have computer labs, then you're able to sit with them at that time and help them fill out their applications. That's a very good way of doing it. The youth have to have an account on Illinois WorkNet along with you guys, and like I said, a lot of that's going to be covered tomorrow, so I'm not going to go really into depth on that. There will be, the application is online, so there will be youth who are going to be filling out applications that may not be associated with your organization, and so we are going to be doing referrals of youth if they're in your area that are interested in an opportunity. And then recruiting quality work sites. You have to have your employers, and then an employer may have more than one work site, and that's fine. But you need to have quality work sites for these youth to participate in, so that they're getting a real, true work experience out of this opportunity. Assess the youth for the work site. You want to make sure that the youth that you're placing are being placed in a work site that's comfortable for them, and that's going to end up in a good result for both the employer and for the youth. Obviously, things you have to take into consideration is, if there's any disabilities, accessibility. For youth, you have to take into consideration transportation concerns for specific youth. So you just need to really assess the youth and make sure that you're making good quality placements with a work site. And then providing supportive services and case management. Once again, that would be, transportation if they need bus tokens or if they have mileage reimbursement that they're going to need, if they have daycare-specific needs. And then case management, just to continue to work with the youth and follow up with them and make sure that the experience that they're having is a good experience and that they're showing up to work and they're, they're doing the jobs as assigned. So, and then once again, monitoring the work site, and, monitor and report. That's two big things in here. And verify. Monitor the work sites to make sure that there's proper supervision, that there's no safety hazards, monitoring to make sure that the youth are there and they are participating and they are working. And then providing the work readiness pre- and post-test and activities. We discussed that in the earlier slide, but that's a requirement of this program, so you need to make sure that they are pre-tested. Strongly recommend you do that, the first week. Make sure that they do the post-test. They could do that towards the end of the work readiness activities or at work readiness time, and then obviously those activities in between. And estimated around 15 hours total is what we're looking at, 3 hours a week for a 6-week period. Timely and accurate payroll. And we have a required youth wage timesheet that we are requiring everybody to use. We want a consistent timesheet out there. I will be showing you that after my PowerPoint presentation. But basically, the timesheet will be given to the employers. The youth and their supervisor will fill out the timesheet. You have to establish times to pick these up. You need to make sure they're timely. I've heard in other youth programs sometimes that's difficult to get the timesheets maybe from the supervisor or the employer in a timely fashion. Just make sure that you set up these processes because we want to make sure the youth are paid timely. And then accuracy. Just make sure that you're looking at these timesheets that they're accurate, they're completed correctly. And then another thing that you're going to end up having to do is in Illinois WorkNet, and this will be discussed, like I said, again tomorrow, but you're going to be doing a payroll upload. So there's specific components that you're going to be taking off of these timesheets, and you're going to be uploading it into the Illinois WorkNet system. So an example would be if you upload a client into Illinois WorkNet and the client isn't a client in our system, then that's a problem. So there's going to be checks to double check that the participants have an application and they're currently enrolled in the summer youth program and that they're also with the work site that was indicated. And those will be linked in Illinois WorkNet. So those are 2 checks that we're going to do with a payroll upload is to make sure that they actually are a participant and that they're with the work site that was that they're linked to. So like I said, once again, just verify, and make sure everything is accurate when you're doing your payroll. And then providing reports. There's a lot of reports that are going to be available to you guys and to us through Illinois WorkNet. And once again, those will be discussed tomorrow. The main report that we have at DCEO is our status report, which is due quarterly. And so this particular report, I'll be sending out at a later time. But it's basically a project and a financial status report, and something that you're going to be required to submit with that as supporting documentation is a trial balance. So Sheila will get into this on the fiscal side, but you need to make sure that you can account for these fund-based accounting, that you can run a trial balance specifically for this grant, so we can determine how your costs are with this. Moving on. We're going to get into costs. Allowable costs, youth wages. A minimum of 70% of the grant needs to be spent on this category under youth wages. We have a $9 an hour is what we're paying all participants. So everybody that's involved in this program are paying their youth $9 an hour. Included in this is the FICA and workman's comp. Now, with FICA, that's the employer benefit, or the employer FICA that needs to be included. The employee FICA comes out of their wages. So for the youth participants, their FICA is coming out of the wages. But the employer FICA and workman's compensation is part of this cost. And also included is the time for the work readiness components. And when I show you the timesheet, you'll see where that's included in. But so anyway, your work experience, your work readiness is all charged to this youth wage category. For program services, a maximum of 20% of the grant can be spent on this. This is your youth case management, your worksite management, and any supportive services to the youth, which is their bus tokens, daycare, work clothes, those types of activities. So those individuals who are working directly with the youth and with the case management, those that are doing the intake and assessment, those individuals who are working with the work sites, establishing work sites, monitoring work sites, all of that would come out of your program services. Your contractual, this would be if you're going to contract out for specific training services. So if you're going to hire a trainer to do maybe some of the course training, that would fall under contractual. Just remember, under contractual and then other costs, if you put money in either of those categories, the only place that can come from is your program services or admin, because the youth wages has to be 70% or more. Other costs, or anything that just doesn't fit into those other categories, but you need to explain what it is to us. And then your administration, maximum of 10% is allowed of the grant is allowed in this. This is your fiscal functions, so this would be your payroll, any of your fiscal functions that are dealing with that, or your executive, functions that are not, directly related to the participant themselves. And this information is all listed in the procedures manual. Okay, another very important thing that you guys need to have is a worksite agreement. Now, we do have one in the procedures manual that you can use. You can adapt it if you need to locally, but you need to have these specific elements of the one that's in the manual. Basically, the general guidelines, worker trainee, they cannot replace an existing employee at a worksite. They cannot reduce any hours of an existing employee at a worksite. They cannot replace an employee that was laid off. So if there's a laid off employee and they cannot take that position, and they cannot impair any existing contracts. So if they have any existing contracts for service, they cannot replace those existing contracts. Part of your responsibility obviously is going to be to monitor the work sites, and we did include a work site assessment in the manual. And once again, monitor, follow up, make sure that the work sites are performing, the way that they're supposed to, and that the youth are showing up, that they're properly supervised, that the environment's safe for them. Some additional things, we have a worksite agreement, which I talked about in the manual, that is available for you, and that's also one of the downloads. The worksite agreement and the worksite assessment form are two downloads that are included on the webinar. All of the employers and the related work sites must be entered into Illinois WorkNet. And this will be gone through more thoroughly tomorrow. But not only are your participants, the application of the participants entered in Illinois WorkNet, but also your employers and their related work sites are going to be entered into Illinois WorkNet. Supervisor background check. Now this is one of them that we've had some questions on. All supervisors of youth need to have a background check, whether they are the employer's supervisor or whether they're a youth supervisor. Now, what we're going to be using is the familywatchdog.com, which is basically a sexual offender website. There is no cost to this. So I know in some of the budgets you have budgeted in some cost for a background check. This is a relatively simple process. It was used for the Summer Youth Employment Program last year. And you can go to this site and you can basically type in a name and then a list will come up. Now, if you have common names, you may have multiple matches on that. So basically what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to do an elimination. And what's going to be required in the files is that you, if there's a common name, you have to go down and you have to validate, and it's my understanding through pictures, whether this particular person is on that site or not. So you have to eliminate your supervisor, or if they're on that site, then they cannot supervise. So that's what we're using for the background check. Like I said, that's what they used last year with the Illinois YES program. Okay, reports. Like I said, once again, Illinois WorkNet has got numerous amounts of reports that'll be available for you to view and also for us. And we're going to be keeping on top of this probably close to a daily basis. So review reports regularly. Get on those and review your reports. See how many youth you have compared to how many you plan to have. You need to stay on this program because it's short. It's a shorter term. We're looking at, 6 weeks is kind of our guide for this work experience for this program. And like I said, the reason for the honing in on a 6-week program is because of the demand that we had. We really had to narrow our focus. And then we have our DCEO report, which is the status report and trial balance. And then that information, we're going to have some additional Q&A sessions down the road. And so that information we can share with you in additional Q&A. But if any of you have worked with DCEO before, you're probably familiar with this. We used to have a financial status report, a project status report, and then we had the trial balance that was supporting documentation. As of the beginning of this year, our department consolidated them into one report, so it's just the DCEO status report, but includes the same information that was on the two separate reports. So we have the project report and status report that's consolidated into one report now. So like I said, if you've worked with us before, you're familiar with this. If not, we will definitely help you with this and explain how to use it. Okay, Dee, what I'm going to do now, if it's okay, I'm going to share some of the forms. So I'm going to go into the documents that they're going to be using. The first two documents I want to discuss, and I want you guys to complete these today and get them into me today, if at all possible, because we're initiating the grants as we speak. And so we need to have this information today. The first one is the authorized signature form. Complete this particular form. You have your grantee name. Don't worry about a grant number because it has not been assigned to you yet, so just leave that blank. We have not assigned a number, but we want the date. And then the name and title of the basically who's going to be the authorized signator. You're not going to have a new signator, so basically what I need for you to do is just sign the top line of who the existing signator is. And then that will designate who's going to be the authorized signator. Now, the authorized signator is the number one signator. And many times it's the executive director that is responsible for this. So that's what we need you to complete, because we want to make sure when we're entering this information that we have the correct authorized signator. Oh, Sheila has something. Just go ahead, Sheila.
The person that is the signatory should be the person who is authorized to bind your organization to contractual type of agreements, because that person will be signing this grant agreement. And when you sign that grant agreement, it means that you agree to abide by its terms and conditions. So it can't be just, not necessarily that the secretary doesn't have that authority, but it can't be just the secretary of the organization. It needs to be someone who can actually bind your organization to an agreement.
And so whoever's signing this top line where it says name of existing authorized signator, whoever's signing that, like I said, disregard the lines below that. This is for if there was a change also. Whoever is signing that also needs to be the individual that signs the grant when we send it out to you. So you make sure that whoever you're putting on this line is the one that's going to sign the grant agreement when you get it back from us. Any other? Okay, the next form, and you can also do this at the time of signing the grant agreement. But in a lot of cases, somebody wants to set a designee, and specifically for reporting purposes. A lot of, they'll want somebody else that can sign for the reports. So this particular form, once again, the grantee name at the top. Don't worry about the grant number. It's not assigned. The authorized signator needs to be the person that was on the prior form, the individual who's authorized, the primary authorized signator, the date. And then if you're going to designate somebody else as a signator, we need to have this completed. This can also be done during the grant process, but we want to try and collect all of this information up front because this is a very quick process for us to go through it, and we want to have the information in the system and in correctly, even prior to the point that we're sending the grant out to you guys for signature. But like I said, if for some reason you did forget to put somebody else as another authorized, you can do that when you sign the grant also. There's an opportunity at that point to do that. Okay, next we're going to go to, actually I want to go to the timesheet. The form that's up here right now is the timesheet you have to use. This is what you're going to be sending out, and you can print it, send it out to the work sites, however you want to implement this timesheet. It's up to you, but this is the format that has to be used. It is an Excel timesheet. So an example, if I put 7/1/2013 for the beginning date, it will fill out the bottom dates accordingly. If it doesn't complete it the way you want it to, you can always delete those dates and enter your own dates. So when you're entering your periods, pay period, like I said, just make sure that the dates are correct for the time period that they're going to be working for that week. And like I said, once again, if you want to complete this yourself, you can go in there and you can go ahead and enter a 7/1/2013 in that line item right there. And what that did is it changed everything else down below also. But this is what you need to use. And if you take a look at it, we have time on work readiness. So you're going to do a time in, time out for lunch, time in from lunch, and then time out for the day, and then the total number of hours worked. And at the bottom, you're going to total that week. And then right below that, you're going to give the number of hours for that week on work readiness. And then to the right of that, that's going to be the total for that week. So you're going to add the total hours in the work experience with the time spent in work readiness for a total on that side. Same way with week 2, which then eventually comes down to a pay period total number of hours worked. And then the employer needs to sign. Okay. The employer needs to sign, or the employee needs to sign and date it, and the site supervisor also needs to sign and date it. And then at the top, participants shall be scheduled to work 7.5 consecutive hours. They must have an unpaid meal of at least 20 minutes after 5 hours. So just at the very top of that, at the top of the spreadsheet, make sure you look at that if a participant is working full-time, they have to have a lunch break of at least 20 minutes. And it is an unpaid lunch break. We're not paying for lunch breaks. So just make sure that you're aware of that. Okay. Now we're going to go into this supported services form. This is a universal supported services form. Again, everybody has to use this form. This is to be completed for if they have transportation, if you're doing reimbursement based upon mileage or bus tokens, if you're providing child care, or if there's other costs that you're providing, say for work clothes. This form needs to be completed. The timesheet that I was just on in this form has to be in the client files also. So when a monitor comes out to look at the client files, you're going to have the application, you're going to have the eligibility documentation, related to that application. You're going to have your timesheets. You're going to have your supportive services form in this file. And like I said, this is the form you have to use. We want it in this particular format. And then, like I said, we do have a worksite agreement, and this is just basically what it looks like that's available for you guys to use. It's got a lot of information in there. I think we pretty well covered everything that we possibly could. One of the things that we're going to need to know, or you guys are going to need to know, is on the timesheets, when they're going to be delivering, when you're going to deliver the timesheets and how you're going to get them. So basically this one line says, that timesheets are due to the service provider or payroll prepared by time sequence, and then delivered to, and then how you're going to be receiving these timesheets from the site supervisors or the employers. And it gives you the pay dates. And then I provide basically the worker trainee placement information, number of slots, job title, hours per week, number of weeks, and then the supervisor. They don't have to work full-time. They can work part-time. And like I said, we're looking at, average around a 6-week program. And then signatories. Now, you can modify this form if need be, but we do need a lot of these components to be included in your worksite agreement. And then we also have a form for doing a worksite assessment. I mean, this is something you can modify if you want to, if you want to add more components to it. But this is just basically a monitoring tool for you guys when you go out to your work sites. So you can take a look at this on your own, and this is what needs to be completed when you're doing your monitoring of the work sites. We included the form for when you're doing your income eligibility. Some of them may be eligible based upon their income. So here's a form that can be used for calculating their income eligibility. And then there's a self-attestation form right below that. This one is actually just a picture. If you may have to produce that yourself, or you probably just want to print that one out and have it filled out, hand filled out. And I think the last one that I need to show you is a release form. This release form is to be used, and basically it's just giving you guys and us authority to use pictures, stories, names, if we want to use this for any PR purposes. So if we're going to be using, or if you guys are going to be using any of these youth participants or work sites, and there's one for an entity and there's also one for an individual, if you're going to want to be using any of their information for any PR reasons, then this needs to be completed and it needs to be in their files. Well, at this point, I think I have gone through everything on the procedure side. Now, Dee, do you have the computer?
We've got the computer back. I've got some questions from your presentation, and we need to do this kind of rapid fire because we've got 20 minutes left in our hour.
Okay.
So how does one document at-risk youth? Is that in the procedures manual?
Yes, it is in the procedures manual under the attachment. It's basically the, yes. Under attachment A in procedures manual, we defined as the court-involved or at-risk youth. And so there's a definition under attachment A for that.
And how recent does the documentation need to be? Does it say that as well?
You know, I would say within the last 6 months.
Okay. And we can hire youth who are between the ages of 14 to 24, but they need to have a work permit if they're under 16?
Correct.
And next question is, what is the attendance requirement? Are there a specific number of unexcused absences before they must
in the
terminate
RFA, for performance, we said 90%. This is going to be a pretty short program, so I mean 90% is what we're looking at for attendance on the work site and for work readiness.
All right, and if an organization has already conducted an initial work site, can they use those forms, or do they need to add it as an addendum to your form?
So are they talking about the work site agreement?
An initial site visit. I think there was a site visit.
Yeah, that's fine. They can, if they have a site visit, you know, so long as it encompasses kind of what we have on our forms, that's not a problem if they've already done an initial site visit. And that's recommended too strongly to do an initial site visit because, I mean, you want to make sure that you're placing these kids in quality work experiences.
And if they're working with an organization that already has, like a school that already has background checks, can they use those?
Yes.
And next question, fingerprint check, will that suffice, or does it need to be a full background check?
No, what we're requiring is a watchdog, which is a sexual offender site, so that's what they have to have, you know, a minimum for our program.
Okay.
So if they have additional, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having additional background, but that, you know, what we're requiring is the watchdog.
Okay. Okay, next, does Social Security number +4 mean just the last 4 digits of the Social Security number on the timesheet?
Yes, just the last 4. And that's actually what we're collecting on the applications. So we're just doing the +4 in the application and on the timesheet.
All right, and can timesheets be completed along with the same pay schedule of the existing organization?
Yes, and you have to define that. The organizations are defining when these youth are going to be paid because you guys are the employer of records. You know, the grantees that we have selected are the employer of record. So you're defining when payroll is going to be done.
All right. Can timesheets be completed along with, oh, we already asked that one. Does the work site need to provide a copy of their liability insurance to the community-based organization?
It's probably not a bad idea.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I would get it.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense.
Yes,
Can work readiness be completed during a 1-week block prior to work experience?
That's up to you how you design your program. As long as you're completing the work readiness, you can do it over the 6 weeks, or you can do it all in 1 week.
Okay, and then someone just made a comment. Fingerprint checks which go through the FBI are full background checks, so just to be clear, do we still need to use the watchdog?
Yeah, I think that would probably suffice, because like I said, the watchdog is a sexual offender site, so I would anticipate that would include